I'm Sam Roberts of the New York Times, and welcome to the New York Times Close Up. As the tax deadline looms, we get an inside look at how one taxpayer copes. New York Times science reporter John Schwartz discusses his latest book, This is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order. It's arrived just in the nick of time. Sunday Magazine contributing writer Linda Villarosa brings us a disturbing report, why America's black mothers and babies are in a life and death crisis. It's the cover story in this week's Sunday Times Magazine. My Times colleagues discuss the key issues of the week on the backstory, and I'll offer some additional thoughts on Coda. But first, John Schwartz, science writer for the Times, his latest book, This is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order, just been published by the Avery imprint of Penguin Random House. John, you've done some odd feats for the New York Times and covered some strange things in your day. How do they compare with trying to put your financial house in order?
Well, when I strapped on a jetpack and was walked around somebody's front yard with two people holding me down because they didn't trust me, that was exciting and loud and frightening, and but not as frightening as actually confronting the mess of my finances after not looking for decades. I mean, in fact, we were in okay shape at the point I really took a look, but I realized that in my late 50s, I was close enough to retirement to be worried and want to know where I stood and whether I needed a checkup on a lot of issues, but far enough away, I hoped, so that I could fix things if I was off track. And so I took on the project of examining my financial life and adjusting, fixing where I needed to, and doing it in a way that the steps could, maybe be instructive to somebody who wanted to follow along.
The book began as a Times article on retirement planning, but I've always had one big question. Not only how do you know when you're going to retire or if you should retire, but how do you know how long you're going to live?
Those are the biggest questions, and they are fundamental and metaphysical and frightening. And that was the very first thing I did. I was trying to figure out, okay, I've got to look at my 401k, and I've got to look at my pension, I've got to look at my Social Security. So I take one of these quizzes online to see where you stand. And the first question is, when do you plan to retire? I'd never thought of that. I want to work till I can't work. Mm-hmm. That's my plan. My plan is no plan. But in filling out these forms, you take a first step towards saying, okay, I know I don't want to retire at 65. Mm-hmm. That seems too early. But sometime in my 70s makes sense to me if I can stick around that long. So what you do, instead of treating it like an iron-bound contract that you're going to set with yourself.
Or like a total abstraction.
Or a total abstraction. You hit this number and you see how it works out. You hit this number and see how it works out. And by bracketing and targeting, I was able to say, 70 doesn't sound bad. And if present trends continue, I'll be able to retire with enough income to live comfortably, if not high. And so going estimate by estimate, just taking a shot and seeing where it comes out, worked for me. And I still don't know when I want to retire.
Is it ever too late to put your financial life in order?
I don't think so. But I do think that it's harder to catch up the longer you wait. One of the things I try to do is grab every 20-something who's got a job and say, this is the time to start saving. Mm. If you start saving now, things are going to be so much better for you. And if you get a nice raise and put it away now, put it into a 401k, and just sort of forget you've got it, then you're going to do pretty well by the time you're 60. And these are people who can't even see 60, but just laying that in, I think, does some good, or at least I hope so. By the time you're in your 50s, what it means is you want to put some money away, you need to start putting a lot away. You need to hurt a little now to save more for later, because if you do nothing, then you'll have nothing. If you do something, you'll have something, and the something is important. There's something that gets passed around as a Chinese proverb, which is not a Chinese proverb, but it's a pretty good proverb. And it is, the best day to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best day to plant a tree is today. So
It sounds like something
sounds profound.
somebody wise would
Right,
say.
something in between profound and a Hallmark card, and that's pretty much where I
Well,
live.
Sid Richardson said something that may not be quite as wise, but he said, "I'd rather be lucky than smart," which you quote in the book. So how do you get lucky?
Part of the way I got lucky was to get that raise at the age of 26 or 27 that was a big bump in my salary. Largely because somebody at the place I worked at the time, Newsweek, figured out that I was being underpaid so egregiously that they were going to feel guilty if they didn't give me...
My God, a boss who feels guilty?
I was moving from one boss to another.
Ah.
But it was an interesting moment, and it was enough of a raise that I could take 10% of my salary and move it into this thing and not feel it. Whereas if I was trying to put aside 10% of my salary before then, when I was scrambling, it would have been nearly impossible. I would have dipped into it. But taking money that I wasn't going to see anyway and putting it aside helped me a lot. What I tell young people who aren't in that position, who aren't getting some big bump in income, is to say, you know, you could possibly assign 1% of your income to an IRA or a 401k. And you can set up these accounts so that you do that 1%, and it should not give you a lot of trouble to do that. And then tell it every year to pop up one more percentage point, just one a year until you get to your 10%. And it's a relatively painless way to do this. And if you do it in your youth, then you got a lot less to worry about later.
Looking back, when it's easy to second guess, what would you say your biggest mistake was in terms of financial planning?
Buying an apartment in Manhattan in the 1990s. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I didn't understand the New York housing market. I did not understand what a co-op was. I probably still don't. But
you and everyone else.
Exactly. But I didn't understand that I didn't understand that I was buying at the top of the market. That's a mistake anybody can make. I also didn't understand that if a building is insufficiently subscribed, if not enough apartments have converted, you're going to have a terrible time finding a bank that will lend in that building if prices are dropping. And so I had this double whammy. The apartment was unsellable, and I got moved. I got a job at the Washington Post, moving from Newsweek to the Washington Post. Great opportunity. I'm leaving the apartment behind, and it becomes unsellable. I think, well, I'll be a landlord. That's easy.
Sure.
Easiest thing in the world. Tenant stops paying. Tenant tells me he knows I can't do anything to him because he knows his rights, which wasn't true. I mean, you know, I have rights as a landlord as well, but the tenant was right that it was going to be very hard and very expensive to do anything about it. And by the time I got out from under all that, our savings were gone. My income was completely squeezed by paying on two places, and ultimately, we lost that apartment through foreclosure.
And thank goodness John Schwartz has now put his financial life in order. That's the name of the book. This is the Year I Put My Financial Life in Order, just been published by the Avery imprint of Penguin Random House. Coming up, New York Sunday Times Magazine contributing writer Linda Villarosa. Welcome back. Joining me now, Sunday Times Magazine contributing writer Linda Villarosa. She directs the writing program at City College. She's also written the cover story in this Sunday Times Magazine, Why America's Black Mothers and Babies Are in a Life and Death Crisis. The answers, unfortunately, are sitting right on the surface, and they are startling. Linda, tell us first the statistics, which I found absolutely amazing. What is the difference in survival rates between black babies and white babies these days, after great progress since the beginning of the 20th century?
I think what was really shocking for me is that the disparity between black babies and white babies in infant mortality is greater now than it was in 1850 when black women were still enslaved. And so it's 2.2. That's the differential between black and white. which is, at first I thought, well, 2.2, what does that mean? But if you erase the differential, it's actually 4,000 babies a year. And so it's just really sad and really wrong, and it's been going on for a while.
And it's also, the United States is one of relatively few countries where that rate has gotten worse over the past 25 years.
Exactly. And also both infant and maternal mortality are sort of a signal that something's wrong with your country. It's a signal of the health of your country. So if those rates are high, it means the health of your country is not good.
Now, presumably we've had better nutrition programs, better prenatal care, better programs like that. What has gone wrong?
Well, the rates in this country are driven by the rates of black women and their babies. And so something is going on with race. And one of the quotes that really stuck with me was one of the scientists that had really done a deep dive into this topic said, there is something about being a black woman in America that is bad for your baby's birth weight. And I just thought, oh my goodness. Now this isn't just, an activist or just me saying it, it's a scientist. And that really struck me.
Do we know that this is causal or is this coincidental?
We don't know. So what we do know is we have a lot of statistics. We have a lot of black women reporting, about what happens to them both in their lives and also when they enter the healthcare system.
So what do scientists, doctors think the connection could be?
Well, two things. One is just very high levels of stress that black women undergo. And there's something that is across class lines. So a black woman who has an advanced degree like myself has a higher likeliness that she will die in childbirth or her baby will die than a white woman with an 8th grade education.
Now that is amazing. What do they attribute that to? That there's a higher level of needing to achieve, or what kind of stress is that attributable to?
Well, one of the studies that I looked at asked questions about race. And first, some of them were just kind of daily insults. So it's, do people think you're not as intelligent as other people? Do people judge you because of the color of your skin? And others were, have you been discriminated against by the police? Have you been discriminated against at your job or in housing? And in all those cases, women who reported more levels of discrimination, either the minor or the major, had higher levels of preterm birth. And so scientists are trying to make these causal connections because it's important to really understand what is going on here.
And one of the other things you found in talking to many scientists and doctors is that black women seem to be discriminated against by the healthcare system.
Yes, and it's not just black women, it's black people. But it's interesting and terrible that it comes out during childbirth often and pregnancy because that's a literal stress test of your body. And so there you are in, having this really stressful incident and then you're not being treated well. And so there have been both black women reporting this. There's been a lot of research actually about discrimination in healthcare. And I think the best example was what happened with Serena Williams. So Serena Williams presumably could afford the best health care that money could buy between herself and her very rich husband, but her complaints were ignored. She is a woman who would know her body more than anyone else, and when she talked about what might be going on right after her baby was born, she was ignored.
Did you have some of these experiences during your own childbirth experience?
So my experience was, I was a very healthy person. I'm really into sports and athletics, and I eat very well, and I'm very conscious of my body. But my doctor said to me when I got pregnant with my daughter, who is now college age, said, your baby's not growing very fast. So then it turned out, so she sent me to a specialist. So I ended up having something called intrauterine growth. It used to be called retardation, but they changed the name, restriction. And so I said, what is that? And she said, well, let the specialist tell you. So the specialist kept asking me all these questions about drug use and smoking. And I said, okay, wait a minute, what is this? So it's something that happens to women mainly who don't eat right or who, smoke, use drugs, drink during pregnancy, or have a really serious illness, which I didn't have. And so it turned out it was very strange. I thought, why am I having this? And then my baby was actually born low birth weight. She was only 4 pounds, 13 ounces, and was born right at term. And so I started thinking, is there something about being a black woman in America that is affecting my own daughter's birth weight?
It's a fascinating story. The cover of the Sunday Times Magazine with photographs by LaToya Ruby Fraser, and of course at nytimes.com. Thanks to Linda Villarosa for joining us, and you can read that article in the magazine and again online too. And coming up next, the backstory with my Times colleagues. Welcome back. What kind of week has it been? One of incursions, firings, resignations. What else is new? Joining me to discuss this week's events and ponder the future, my Times colleagues, contributing writers Clyde Haberman and Eleanor Randolph, and City Hall Bureau reporter David Goodman. David, what is it about the de Blasio administration? I guess it's a great place to work if you never want to get fired.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you like being shown the door in a very gracious and elegant manner, it's quite a nice place. I mean, the mayor has had this habit of sort of showing people out without really ever saying you're fired. He's kind of like the inverse of The Apprentice. He never wants to have to say those words. And what that does, it obviously protects him from ever having to admit that he made a mistake in hiring. But it also, you know, it's very transparent that he has forced into the position of having to get rid of certain people. And that happened this week with the head of the city's public housing authority, Shola Olatoye, who after months of scandal and increasing scrutiny from the governor and the feds was sort of shown out, but allowed to have a press conference in which there was a cheering squad, and she sort of thanked people by first name as if she was accepting sort of an Academy Award. And so it was a bit of an odd scene, but it's something that we've seen before where people that have undergone incredible scrutiny, the corrections commissioner, the head of homeless services, at the time when the scrutiny is the sort of heaviest, is when they're shown out, but they're never fired. They're sort of...
Does that also mean that while protecting the mayor's reputation, the person is there perhaps months longer than they should be?
I think that's what people would say who are looking from the outside. I mean, I think with, one issue that they have inside City Hall is it's been difficult for them to replace people that are being shown out, and so that happened at corrections where they looked around for quite a while to find somebody and ultimately settled with a deputy. And also with homeless services, they don't like to... The mayor doesn't like to sort of make an announcement about something bad without having something good to say along with it, and so he's brought that to his personnel handling.
It also makes sense. If you don't want to fire people because those people will go to the press and they might even go to a prosecutor. I mean, you never know. So I think I know in the Bloomberg administration they were very reluctant to fire people for a lot of reasons, but one of them was that disgruntled person goes out and spreads the word that you're not a great mayor.
That's absolutely right. And one person that they showed out, they felt like was very bureaucratic and had been an obstacle, was the head of the city's administrative services division, which is very esoteric, but they handle rents and procurement and other sorts of things. A lot of people in the administration didn't like her, but instead of firing her, they found a job for her at H&H, and one of the reasons they went there is because the pay was pretty comparable. And so they found her a job where she'd be paid the same, and in return, she didn't go blabbing about how much she didn't get along with the administration.
Isn't that blackmail?
Yeah.
Well, you're skirting the line. But speaking of crimes, it'll be interesting to see if anybody winds up being charged with a crime on this housing authority business. I mean, look, somebody faked certification of lead paint inspections for 4 years and said they were done when they weren't done at all. It strikes to me that there is, at a minimum, there's filing of fraudulent documents or something, but you're also putting children in danger. There are still a lot of lead painted walls and whatever in these buildings. This is outrageous. So it's not just an irritant for the mayor and his administration, let alone an Academy Award. There are some people down at the DA's office, or maybe the Southern District's U.S. Attorney's office, who might find this an indictable offense.
David, why did that happen? I mean, couldn't they just as easily have said, we haven't done it yet, we promise we will? I mean, that wouldn't have changed things materially, would it?
Right. I mean, it's a little bit of a complicated situation. They stopped doing them in the Bloomberg administration because they had changed sort of how they were doing them. They had been part of the annual inspection for other kinds of conditions, and that they were trying to save work for the NYCHA employees, and so they took that. They stopped doing those annual conditions inspections, but they never It never stopped being the case that they were required to do annual lead inspections, but because they stopped visiting the apartments, they weren't doing those. And they didn't discover that problem until the middle of the de Blasio administration. Now the problem is, once they discover it, after that they certify another document saying they had been doing them, and then
So they lied.
Yeah.
They lied, and what I think is a bigger problem, whether or not there's an indictable offense here, is that they didn't tell tenants that this was the case. They went forward and they started to remediate in situations, and they told tenants, we need to get into your apartments, but they weren't being forthcoming about the reason why is because for years we haven't been checking to see if there's a hazard in here. We really need to know now, and it's imperative that you get your kids tested, and we need, they never made any kind of effort to try and think about the best interests of the residents, besides trying to sort of cover themselves and then go public later that year.
Aside from the fact they had no heat all winter either.
That's another issue, sure.
Eleanor, why has Cynthia Nixon made her first big issue marijuana?
Well, I don't know why, but I think it's a very, very interesting idea. There are, first of all, really, whites who smoke marijuana don't go to jail as often as blacks. I mean, it's just, that data is out there. And also, what she's talking about is something I've always thought we should really consider. If you could make grass regulated so that, the way it is in Colorado and in California, and then if you're going to sell it publicly and tax it, and maybe we could put those taxes into the MTA or NYCHA or whatever. It makes sense. It's more than
sort of another form of congestion pricing.
Weed for speed.
Sorry.
Oh. You couldn't help it. But it's, for goodness sake, in Washington, John Boehner, the former Speaker of the House, has decided he's now going to lobby on behalf of marijuana because he says it's going to help veterans and sort of undo a lot of the opioid crisis. I don't know. There might be some other reasons.
There's a lot of money in lobbying for the marijuana.
And not to mention the condition of the subways that, being high may be the best way to get through the ride.
Good point. You and Willie Newman wrote a piece about Stan Bresnov coming to the rescue of the Housing Authority. He immediately said there's only so much you can do, but it's fascinating that he gets called upon, a man who is now 80, who started, I think, with the Lindsay administration and then did a lot for Ed Koch. One of the few sort of elder statesmen, wise men left in the city.
And that's part of the reason why he keep going back to him. I mean, it is, and we sort of made this point rhetorically in the story, that it's like one of these movies where he's being called on for one last job. It's like the Danny Glover of Lethal Weapon, and every time it's like, oh, he's got to come out of retirement for one more. People said, and I think he said this as well, that he's sort of failing at retirement. But one of the reasons why they're going to him is that, as I was saying before, it's hard for the administration to find people to come into these jobs. They're high scrutiny, high stress, and not a lot of reward, and you're being pilloried constantly. And when they name Stan, as he's done for the mayor in other instances, he's a little bit bulletproof. It's hard for people to criticize, and so it buys the administration a little bit of time to figure out what to do. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
And he is pretty smart. Thanks to Clyde Haberman, Eleanor Randolph, David Goodman for joining us, and I'll have some further thoughts in a moment on Coda. Defining obscenity was once fairly simple. Most Americans personally shared Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart's threshold. I know it, he said, when I see it. Pretty much the same thing could have been said for political corruption. If a pro with a quid facilitates a quo, that alone would have been enough to suggest that someone was peddling influence at the public's expense. Not anymore. Take this case. An entrepreneur seeking the state's help to launch his business gives the governor $175,000 in loans, gifts, vacations, and other perks. The governor arranges a meeting and contacts another public official on behalf of the businessman. Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell was convicted of extortion for doing just that, but the Supreme Court overturned his conviction. The court concluded that the governor's intervention did not constitute an official act. In January, a judge dismissed most charges against New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. The senator had been accused of collecting campaign contributions and lavish gifts from an eye doctor. The senator had helped the doctor get U.S. visas for his girlfriends and helped in settling a billing dispute with Medicare. The senator insisted the benefits were merely the fruits of a long friendship. The judge agreed. He said there was no quid pro quo. Guilty verdicts against two of New York's major power brokers, Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver and Senate Majority Leader Dean Skelos, were similarly overturned, demonstrating once again that the problem in Albany isn't what's illegal, it's what's legal. This spring, Silver and Skelos are due to be tried again. Those verdicts will determine whether we become so cynical as to unfetter greedy public officials altogether. It's what Pat Moynihan warned against long ago regarding petty criminals in the street, not the powerful ones in the State House. He said society had begun to define deviancy down. Most public officials are honest, but to quote Henry Kissinger, corrupt politicians make the other 10% look bad. Robert Caro, the biographer of Robert Moses and Lyndon Johnson, knows something about power. He said, "We're taught Lord Acton's axiom, all power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely." Caro said, "I believed that when I started my books, but I don't believe it's always true anymore. Power doesn't always corrupt. Power can cleanse. What I believe is always true about power is that power always reveals." For the New York Times and CUNY TV, I'm Sam Roberts.